I got a heavyweight on my channel today. Oh my God. Let me tell you, my viewers, Strong Inspirations is coming up. Now, let me temper with this. All the people that come on this channel, I love them all. I love them all because they all got good stories of some sort, and they took the time to come on this channel. So I'm not trying to, well, let me see how to put it. No, I ain't gonna put it no way. I'm happy she on here. I just want to tell you that I'm happy she owns Strong Inspirations. And when I tell, she gonna tell her own, she gonna tell her name herself. But when you know her background, you'll be excited like I am. Now, as you all know, I'm in Detroit, and I'll give you this tidbit, a little hint. She was the former executive director, CEO, president, all that head honcho of the Charles Wright Museum in my city. And I used to go by there because they had a bunch of programs. I'm telling you, I've been loving some Black history for a long time. Didn't know this was going to be my slant, but here I am. All right. And so let's do this. Subscribe to the channel. It's free. Just let me know you're watching and I can feel you, because I get these messages every now and then from them people and they like, yo, I like what you're doing. All right. Hit the like this video. If you don't like no other video, this sister know what she let me tell you, she an expert. She an expert, right? So like this video, hit that notifications bell, because when the video come up, you really want to be the first to watch it so you can tell people what she said. And then you act like you smarter. All right, do that. And then tell somebody about Strong Inspirations. Just say, hey, just whisper to somebody. Say, hey, man, hey, sister, hey, you heard of this Strong Inspirations? Check it out. That's what I asked you to do. And then, you know what I really would like for you to do? This is my piece, because I'm a historian too. I just don't know as much as she do. I just don't know it. I ain't been at it that long, right? Watch my movie. It's called Business in the Black, The Rise of Black Business in America. It's good. I'm telling you it's good, all right? Not just because I did it, but I had other people, they said they thought it, they really enjoyed it. Give you an example. I was in Cincinnati, and the DVD at the theater kind of stopped working. It was 1 minute left. The sister said, I ain't leaving till I see my last minute. I said, okay, sister, I can tell you what it's about. She said, nope, I ain't going nowhere. I got to see my last minute. And we did it. It's Business in the Black. And then, and I'm this good, I wrote the book on it. It's titled Black Business Book. It's over 200 facts, and it's an easy to read book. I'm telling you, because I'm not as good as the sister that's coming on the channel, right? So I don't give you no commentary. I just give you the fact. I don't try to make up. I don't try to interpret it or nothing. And you notice that even on my show, I don't be trying to interpret nothing. I let them do the talking, and I just try to ask questions. The book is good. It's very comprehensive. I number the facts so that when you say, oh man, you're telling somebody, man, you see fact number 47, they can go right to it. And it's easy to cross-reference to the reference section of where I got the fact. And then it's got some quotes by some famous people back in the day, and it's got a few photos. The book is good. Get you a copy of this. And I tell you what, if you read my book and you don't learn nothing new, I'll give you money back. My book come with a money back guarantee. I'm that confident. And it's, as the movie is, they're both on Amazon, but you know, and the movie streaming on there, you can get the DVD and the books on there. But if you really want to cut the big Amazon, man, I'll just go to my website, businessintheblack.net. The sister say, come on, I'm ready to go. I got things to do, brother. I appreciate you doing your thing, but come on, she got so much knowledge that it's absolutely incredible. So I'm gonna stop talking right there, my friends. But let me say this, I got one more thing. You hear me say the word strong a lot? Strong stands for strength, tenacity, resilience, and a sense of oneness, nobility, and grace. And that's my introduction to my guest today. She's a strong sister. Y'all watch, y'all follow her. All right, sister, introduce yourself. Let's go for it.
Okay, well, hello everybody. I'm Christy Coleman, and I was president and CEO of the Charles H. Wright from 1999 until 2005, the end of 2005, when I left to have my second child, and I'm back in the museum world. Have been, for a minute. Came back to Virginia, and Detroit will have a special place in my heart for the rest of my life. I mean, it was amazing how the community embraced me, and how I worked really hard when I was there to hear all of the voices of Detroit, to listen, and the folks who had felt that they had been pushed away from the museum. I had the absolute blessing of being able to meet and know Dr. Wright and his second wife, Miss Roberta.
Yep.
And just really an important part of my life. So,
well, how did you get to be who you are? Did you always like Black history or something? How do you want to make this your career path?
Well, I mean, sure. I mean, my parents, my parents were huge influences. I mean, they used to take me and my sisters to museums all the time.
Where did you grow up at? Where did you grow up?
Well, we moved around a lot when I was younger. Okay. So, for the earlier, I was born in Central Florida. And because of my mother's career, she was a singer. We lived in Philadelphia for a while. And then my dad and I, we moved to Washington, D.C. So we were in D.C. for a while when she transitioned, into the business and banking world that she was in. My father was a cordon bleu trained chef. And so that's where we were. And then that led to my father getting a job to come to Williamsburg, Virginia, which is full of history, right? Colonial revolutionary history. So I've always been around, because even, living in DC in particular, the Smithsonian was free. So going to the museum was, a very common thing. I didn't grow up not seeing myself in those spaces, but I certainly grew up not knowing that I could work in those spaces. And so, in fact,
I can imagine it's kind of, when you grow up, people say, I want you to be a doctor or a science, something else. But for them to say, I want you to be a historian. Does someone ever say that to somebody? I want you to be a historian. This is what you said.
Yeah. I mean, I meet young people all the time who want to, do that. So it's not that unusual. I mean, we've had Black scholars and historians from day one, right? I mean, African peoples were not brought over here with nothing. These were scientists and engineers and farmers and doctors and mothers and fathers. I mean, that genius has always been there, right? And so it's a matter of being able to express it in a Western context is really what we're talking about. And so, I didn't, again, grow up thinking that's what I want to do. It didn't occur to me. I mean, well, I'll say this. So when I was 17, there was a new program at the museum. Now, one of the things that I have always loved since I was in elementary school was performing. So being on stage, acting, that sort of thing was always a part of me. And so that's actually how I got into museums, was through theater. I had seen a historical theatrical performance that just blew me away. And it's the first time that I saw someone give voice to Black people, to enslaved Black people during this period of time. And I thought, I want to do that. That's powerful. That's changing things. And that was, 30, going on 40 years ago. Right.
So you get your education in history.
I did.
It's hard to imagine. So, I'm studying to be a PhD in history. I take a test to write a paper on history. I take a test to get the multiple choice to see if I remember this history. How do you take it to the next level being a historian?
I think that the key thing to remember about history, and one of the reasons why, really speaking, they don't teach it well, and everything that we learn about history is really based on where we are in the present. It
Oh,
is
really?
it is the questions that we ask of the past for guidance and understanding. So if you frame it as, for example, really understanding how did we get to a place where, for example, we don't value indigenous land the same way, right? So you
Okay.
go back, that simple question in the present. Why is it that the government feels like they can consistently break treaties with Native peoples? Well, we go look at the history and we find out that that has been the modus operandi since 1607.
I got it.
And actually to 1565 when the Spanish showed up, right? It just depends on which people. So Europeans would outstrip the needs of Native peoples, and genocide was something that was perfectly acceptable to Europeans to get what they wanted, which was the land, right?
Yeah.
And so it's always so fascinating, just looking at sort of the course of this nation. And let me be clear. I mean, I love being an American. There are elements of Americanness that I absolutely hate, and then I would love to change, and then I work to change. And I understand that in order for me to do that, or one of the ways that I can do that is using the spaces that I'm in to educate the public around topics that they may not know. So ultimately, my job in museums is about taking the work of those PhDs, taking the work of the scholars, this new work that they're doing, and turning that into program for public, whether the public is a K through 12 student, whether that public is the person who likes to come to weekend lectures, whether it's that person who just loves cultural experiences, whatever that is, to bring that new scholarship to the public in a very concrete way so that it becomes usable, actionable history. I mean, that's sort of the next step that we go to. So
let me ask you this. Does
sure.
that, and you kind of alluded to this, does history bother you at any time? Do do you ever get tired of looking at Black folks in chains? I had a roommate when I was in college. He had a whole wall of Black folks in chains, slavery type thing. And I told him I couldn't take it every day, man. I don't want to go back every day and see that. But that was his motivation. Does it ever bother you to some extent, or you become immune to it, to telling those stories?
You're never immune to it. I mean, if I read like if something new has been uncovered and I read it, I certainly have an emotional response to it. But do I want to hide it away? Absolutely not.
Okay.
Because as I said, and one of my colleagues, Richard, and I'm not sure who he got it from, but brilliant young brother that's in our field. And he said, one of the things that we have to understand is that our ancestors gave us more than trauma.
Okay, right? I love it.
And you started this off with, what does strong mean?
Yes.
And those people were strong.
Yes.
And yes, it is heartbreaking to see people that you love, to see your ancestors in pain. But that is one snapshot of the lives that they live, because we are here because of their resilience. And don't think because we are here is about acquiescence. See, that's something that white people put in our heads. It is not acknowledging the strength of our people. And yes, these things are painful, but like I said, you have to remember that our ancestors gave us more than their trauma and their pain. They gave us hope. Yeah. They gave us strength. They gave us resilience. So for your friend, when he looked at that, he looked at what they endured to ensure that he had those things, those elements of resilience in himself, that he could always go back and look at that picture. They endured this so that I can move this. Yes. And so I think that so that's kind of how I view it. But yeah, I mean, absolutely, I feel that way. And honestly, it's not relegated to me feeling that way about just my African ancestry. I mean, I feel that way towards any marginalized people by powerful forces that have been, again, abused, murdered, killed, disenfranchised, whatever that is. I feel that is a common, as a common humanity. So when it comes to my work, I position it sort of this way. We will never get right with each other until we get our history right. Okay. So my job is to help make sure we get the history right. Okay, for all
let me ask you this then. Have you discovered a fact yourself of any sort. Let me tell you that has changed way people thinking that. And I posted this on a question to you once. I don't know if you know it was me. I had a lady on the show that said that really the first slaves did not come to Jamestown; they came to Fort Monroe. Now
That's
I don't
correct.
know if she discovered that.
No, that's absolutely correct. The White Lion ship. So those people who were on board that ship, the enslaved, and I call them enslaved because they had been enslaved by the Portuguese.
Right.
They had been traded to the Portuguese through a series of just very violent and very costly wars and so forth that were taking place among those three primary kingdoms that now make up the nation of Angola and beyond contemporary borders. But anyway, these people were taken to a number of places, but when they finally made their way into North America, they did land at Old Point Comfort. Old Point Comfort is what became Fort Monroe. There was no such thing of Fort Monroe at the time. It was called Old Point Comfort. It was just a supply stopover for the English.
Right.
Just a few of the 20 and odd captives on the White Lion vessel were disembarked there. The rest were brought to Jamestown.
Okay.
So that's where that's the specificity that's required here. They were taken to Old Point Comfort, which is at the tip of what eventually becomes Fort Monroe.
Right.
A few were taken off the vessel at that time, and the rest were brought here to Jamestown because this was the seat of government for the colony.
I got you.
You see? So that's how it happened and how Jamestown is in this mix.
Let me ask you, is there, how about this for yourself? And this maybe you have it. Do you have a ha-ha moment that you were told one thing and your research proved another thing or proved that thing wrong? Is there a ha-ha moment for you?
I've had a lot of them over the years. Yeah. You know, I think one of the pernicious, that sometimes Black people spread themselves, they took our language, they took our this, they took it, we gave us nothing, right? Yeah. That's nonsense. We created something new from the vestiges of the old. Just because you take someone from a land does not mean you take away all of their memories.
I got you.
Actions. And so to rebuild that among now a variety of tribal peoples over 400 years.
Yeah.
Native born as well as, and by native born meaning born in North America, new arrivals still coming even illegally as late as the spring of 1865 into Alabama, Mobile, Alabama. Yeah. We know that last slave ship vessel that smuggled into Mobile, Alabama in the spring of 1865. The thing that has been the greatest aha moment was, fully understanding that, frankly, that lie that we've told ourselves as a community that they took everything from us is just that, it's a lie. What we did is we created new things based on our collective understanding. So whether it's the way we spiritually express was not something that Europeans did. Europeans didn't know anything about getting the Holy Ghost.
I got you.
They did. That's African expression. Spirit possession is African expression of allowing the divine to enter you, right? And so that has its influences in the religious culture and Christianity. Yeah. We all know about music and art and all of those other kinds of things. But again, the genius of the way that we approach problem solving, making a way out of no way. I mean, we have whole language of how we not only survive, but found ways to thrive. And that's the thing. I think, in probably the last 20 years, I've probably gained a greater understanding of aha moments of just how pernicious systemic racism is at every turn of trying to thwart Black excellence, and Black excellence keeps coming back time and time again. Like your book is talking about Black businesses from I think it's like 1880s to 1960s, something like that. So, is when freedom came, Black folks started just like booming. I mean, booming during
No
Reconstruction,
question.
right?
No
So,
question.
yeah, go ahead.
Now, is there in your town where you are now?
Mm-hmm.
You're in Jamestown, correct?
Well, James, yeah, I'm at the
Yeah, but
site,
that's the
Jamestown.
area.
Yes, that's
What's
where I
there in
work.
Jamestown?
Yeah,
What is Jamestown?
Jamestown is actually part of the community of Williamsburg.
Okay.
The what is called Jamestown is actually James City County, and the Jamestown is actually the historic sites here. So, the historic sites in the museums is Jamestown. There is no official Jamestown
I
anymore.
got you. And at the site, was that was a dock, a shipping dock there? What's there? I mean, I've never been
Yeah,
there.
well, today, the National Park Service is next door. They're on the original site, and there's a lot of archaeology taking place of that original site because of climate change and other things. The archaeology needs to be done because that whole island will be flooded, will be underwater within 50 years
Oh
because of
well.
climate change. And so a lot of research is being done in the ground right now, recovering artifacts, not only of the European settlement, but the uh, 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 Paspahegh and other Powhatan affiliated tribes that lived in the area and lived on some of that land. So there's that, and then here at the Jamestown Settlement, which is where
Yeah.
I work,
Yeah.
which is part of the Jamestown Yorktown Foundation, we operate recreated villages of the Paspahegh town, which was the native community. We
The
have a
Indians.
recreated James Fort, which is what the English built when they landed in 1607. We have the reproductions of the 3 ships that arrived with the English in 1607, the Susan Constant, the Discovery, and the Godspeed. And we have extensive museum galleries and exhibitions, open land. So it's really beautiful here. The area where we have strengthened in our galleries significantly, and I have to preface this by saying, I started this job in January of 2020.
Yeah. So
So
it
I've
slowed
been at
down
this
after
job
that.
now about
Yeah.
15 months. So,
Right.
but considerable work on those first arrived Africans in British North America. Now, and that's the key, because Africans had already been brought to North America by the Spanish into Florida
Oh
in the
really?
1550s. So we talk about Jamestown in 1619 and the
Right.
importance of that, but African peoples had already been brought here by the Spanish in the 1550s, and we're at St. Augustine down in Florida.
Yeah.
Um, the Seminoles ended up also trading in these Africans that were coming through, which gives a whole nother complexity to
Yeah.
ethnic divisions and ethnic histories. The Dutch started bringing in slaves into New Amsterdam, which became New York and New York City. So the French, were towards the south of what we know about Louisiana, but they were also to the north coming through, as you know, being a Detroiter, which is French, Detroit, right?
Yeah.
Detroit,
Yeah. Yeah.
to St. Louis, to Chicago with DuSable settling. DuSable settling Chicago. All of those were trading forts. So there were African peoples who were brought with the French through those vestiges in the 1600s as well.
But let me ask you:
So
they weren't brought here under skies of being enslaved, though, were they? Or they were?
yes, all of these nations were slave trading by the 1600s. The Germans,
So
the French, the Dutch, the Spanish, the Portuguese, um, they were all slave trading. It was just the volume to which they were doing it. The Portuguese and the Spanish by far account for 75% of the Africans who would be bought, sold, and traded into the Western Hemisphere. 75%, just Spain and Portugal. Britain, it accounts for about roughly 15%, and then the others are under 5%. So and we know we can document And we know that there, even with extrapolation out from that, you know, there's a minimum of about 12 million Africans that were brought to British North America. The difference between those who were brought to British North America versus those who were taken to the Caribbean, or those who were taken to, and far more were taken into the British took far more enslaved people into the Caribbean for the sugar and all that, and they had a much higher death rate. But those who were brought to British North America had a natural increase at times that surpassed the white population. So when we get to the eve of the American Revolution, African descended peoples are already third, fourth, fifth generation born on these shores by the American Revolution. Okay, so
let me stop you right there. Everybody, I told you she was going. Well, I didn't know that. Really? So why do they say 1619 is the first slaves got here?
Because we are fixated on the English experience as English speakers.
Really? Okay. Right? Okay. I didn't mean to interrupt you, but wow.
Yeah, and so the expansion of the English empire, because the English will eventually drive out the Spanish. They'll eventually, you know, to the south of them that were in what is now Georgia and Florida and parts of South Carolina, they will eventually drive them out. And the Spanish interests really were more in Central America and South America than they were in North America. The dissident groups from those other countries, especially the Dutch and the Germans, and they were dissident groups like the Pilgrims. You know, that was considered a cult in Europe. You know, it was like, you know, kind of what we would think of perhaps as the Branch Davidians that were on that Mayflower. So the idea that America is founded, that's why 1619 is so important, because that's before the Mayflower, right? So the idea that America is founded on religious freedom is a lie also. America was founded by corporate interests. The settlement of Jamestown was a corporate enterprise. They got a charter from the king to do their business, you know, in North America, but it was a business, and there were shareholders and there were stockholders, and they, you know, hired people to come over here to try to make their way and, you know, promise them land and this and that if they could make the colony work, right? But the whole point was to make money. It wasn't about any religious freedom. It wasn't about a better way of life. It wasn't. It was this colony was established, and then the British interest to move further up and expand their interest was started off in the 1600s as business. Like I said, then you have dissident groups after the success of Jamestown, even as they're continuing to have wars because of their breaking of treaties and alliances with the different Indian nations. Eventually, you know, the French decided their interests are better served in the Caribbean versus the harsh northern reaches of, you know, New England, right? So they pull out. You know, the people who are already settled, they stay here. They know that, you know, the English are coming and they're taking over these. So all of that, it's the expansion of the English empire in North America. And so by the time we get, like I said, by the time we get to the Revolution, I mean, you know, things have changed. The British Empire does take over these colonies from the corporate interests because they believe that they're by doing so, that they're better equipped to have a unified reaction towards indigenous people, and set policy and ensure that certain elements, giving them some local control, but making sure certain elements of British law are in place. So the crown does take over, and that happens during the reign of Charles II. Charles II, yeah. In the mid 1600s, after House of Hanover falls. So so the point of all of this is that there is,
I love it.
All of this is, you know, we don't understand the founding of our nation this way. And I think if we understood it this way, we begin to be able to say, oh yeah, so how were they finally able to make money? Two important things happened. 1610, 1611, John Rolfe, who was one of the principals here in the settlement, John Rolfe brings back to Virginia a hybrid tobacco plant that is a mix of African and European and native stock. It's a hybrid plant. He brings it to Virginia, it grows, and it is fantastic. But he has a labor problem. So the English were clearly aware of what particularly what the French and the Spanish were doing. And in fact, before they got involved in the buying and selling of human beings, the English response was this deplorable thing called slavery that the Portuguese and the French, Portuguese, yes, the Portuguese, the Spanish, and the French are involved in, is because they're papists, meaning because they were Catholic nations. So they said that was a Catholic nation problem. But the Catholic nations were getting rich, especially Spain. Spain actually absorbs Portugal. And so the English are like, oh, okay, wait, we're not finding gold. We're not finding, we're finding a lot of natural resources, timber but we're not finding gold and silver and all the things that the Spaniards have. Well, there's land, right? And we can grow this thing that the world seems to love better than anything else, but we need labor. And so the so-called accident of the white lion coming to Old Point Comfort sets up the labor that they need. So then they start trading with the Portuguese initially for more. And then pretty soon they're trading for themselves and move further up the central West African coast away from Portuguese territories to establish their own trading relationships. And so, it is a worldwide complicity in the exploitation of Black bodies.
Wow.
And Black people are placed all over the planet. I mean, the Dutch and the Germans were taking people from Cape of Good Hope down in South Africa and taking them into places like India, right? And into China.
Wow.
I mean, our people were everywhere during this period. So it's again, the numbers vary, but the trade was worldwide in African bodies. While the land and the resources of a continent were also being stripped. Two continents were being stripped for the interests of European interests.
That leads to this question, and maybe I'm trying to see so good. I ain't got no question, but how about this? This might be a deep question.
Sure.
If they wouldn't have been slavery, how else could this have happened? How else could the world and the English and what could you imagine without slavery, without them taking Black people? Could they have done something differently to develop the world like it has gotten developed in America? Could they have said, okay, we're going to pay you to come? You know what I mean? Could there have been another option other than slavery?
Well, herein lies, I think, part of the problem of doing that kind of intellectual exercise, right? Is that there are two things you have to bear in mind. Throughout human history, on every continent and every people's, there at one point or another, there has always been some form of unfreedom. What made the transatlantic slave trade of Africans the most different in anything in world history, including Roman history, because people like to throw, well, Rome had slaves. The predominant difference of what happened is that this was the largest forced migration in the history of humankind, number one. Number two, it became a system of human hierarchy based on skin color, first time in human history, because that did not happen. A Greek slave looked the same as a Greek master, just as an African slave looked like an African royal. I mean, when you see what I'm saying?
I got you.
It was not this false human hierarchy that became race. Okay, so that's another key difference. Could the world have evolved the way it did? Probably not.
Oh, really?
But here's the thing.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Trade and the interest in varying goods and services for the world over, and we forget this. I mean, trade was already happening between Africa and Europe for gold and spices and salt and cloth and cotton and silk. That was already happening. Trade with India was already bringing, silk and dyes and gunpowders and all these other kinds of things, right? The world, that part of the world was trading. What was not known of the world at that point was what really laid to the west, across the Atlantic Ocean, or away from the Pacific, because you couldn't cross the Pacific to get to North America. I mean, that it is massively bigger than the Atlantic Ocean, right? So that wasn't even part of the deal. I mean, and so humankind had been trading with Africa sort of as their center. You know, if you think about the way that they saw the world, there's you know, huge continent of Africa. You know, there's the European plate, there's the Eurasia plate, the Asian plate, and that those folks traded. But on the other side of the world were a whole nother set of peoples with whole nother sets of cultures and a whole different lifestyle. So the confluence of this Eastern world with this Western world resulted in, and oh, that's the other thing, right? So Africans did not die at rates of disease because of, again, the immunities that these populations had because they'd been trading for centuries before the transatlantic slave trades. These Western peoples, indigenous peoples, were trading amongst themselves and had the same kinds of immunities. When the two did this population dies off rapidly. The island of Hispaniola will lose its native population by 90% through smallpox, dysentery, and other diseases that Europeans bought that were common for them, but killers for those indigenous populations. So, and at one point, because of disease and war and everything else, the rate that native peoples were dying off in North America was not even keeping pace with the numbers of Europeans and Africans being forcibly brought here. Europeans coming and Africans being forcibly brought. So to ask the question of, would the world have developed the same way? Would there be a United States without the slave trade? No, there would not be. But would there be a society established as a democracy? Probably so, because we'd already seen it to some extent through Greco-Roman world. We saw confederations in the native cultures, the native nations in North, Central, and South America. There were these things called confederations. And those confederations, Benjamin Franklin studied how the Iroquois, different tribes had aligned themselves and used that as the model that he brought to the Constitutional, Congress, as we were trying to figure out how we were going to establish the nation. And he brought this idea of a confederation together. So in fact, before we had the US Constitution, we had the Articles of Confederation.
Okay.
Okay, so my point is, we have all influenced what the nation would grow to, but the idea of representative government, the hardest part has been this idea of equity, equalness of one class of people or another. That unfortunately is a ancient world problem, and so, but I just don't know. I don't think that there would be a United States, but would there be a representative democracy that believed in equity? I absolutely believe that is possible in the scale of human history.
What about this one? Let me a couple more questions and not go too long with you. Could there have been, how do you think the first guy in Europe decided, let's go get some Africans? How might that have happened?
Well, I mean, we kind of know how it happens. Yeah. Like I said, I mean, there's trade going on. I mean, there are Africans in Europe in the 1400s, frankly, since the Crusades, right?
Okay.
So, I mean, they're already doing trade. So what they did is they simply exploited social systems for their needs. So if I'm traveling, I'm a Spanish vessel. I'm Christopher Columbus.
Right.
1492. I'm Christopher Columbus, and I want to find a shorter route to get to Asia. So I think if I go left, I'll end up right. But he bumps into land and people. And he gets there and sees their civilizations and their societies and goes, man, I want that. I want to trade, not how do we make this work. I want it, and I'm going to take it. And that's what he does. And he comes back with these riches that gets everybody else's eyes all looking funny.
I got you.
So because before you could make that, you couldn't just go from Spain straight across to, I mean, you could, but
Yeah.
most did not. What they did is they skirted along the African coast, picking up supplies until they got to the currents that they needed to cross the Atlantic. And, you know, and because trade was already happening, to say, I need workers, okay, what do you need? And I can trade with you for human lives because we trade people, but it's not hereditary. Slavery wasn't hereditary in most African societies. It was usually punishment for crime, or
Yeah.
it was war captives or something like that. You know, there was some
Yeah.
hereditary, purposes where you are a lower class citizen, but not necessarily. So they would trade for those people. But what, again, the transatlantic slave trade became was something unseen in human history. The idea that human beings are now treated as chattel.
Right.
And that was another distinguishing feature with the other three that I named earlier. So yeah, I mean, it wasn't accidental. It was, we need more people to go over there. I know that the Africans on the Gold Coast, they know how to mine gold. I know these folks up here near Guinea, they are rice farmers and watermen.
Okay.
So they were going for specific skill sets
I
to take
got you.
those skill sets into, and that's the other thing that people forget. This isn't like sitting around, waiting for the Europeans to come and give you something. I mean, Europeans were going to the African coast because they knew that that's where they could get the skills. Metal workers, look at the bronzes, that we have in our museums that are 14th, 15th century. Africans are doing,
Yeah.
iron work and brass works and gold works. And I mean, so they have the skills that Europeans want to be able to exploit in the New World. And so
Wow.
once they get this going, everybody's making money, including these African higher ups, the ones who have agreed to trade, because there are several African nations that are like, get out of here. We're not giving you any more of our people. But by that time, the greed has consumed and wars are breaking out between various factions and various ethnic groups. And old rivalries are becoming new. And that chaos that erupts is really what enables Africa, Western Africa, to be weakened to the point of not only losing control, but also being colonized. And that's the other part that we often forget. Africa ends up being colonized
Yeah.
around the same time. And when slavery is slowly being abolished, Africa is increasingly being colonized and a new kind of slavery is evolving. Just as, when freedom came for us, there's a new kind of slavery that evolves through the 13th Amendment, through penal justice that we are contending with. And on the continent, it was Europeans deciding that they were going to carve up the African continent the same way they had carved up North, Central, and South America.
Wow. That's deep. Um, whew. Is there so now at your museum,
Mm-hmm.
is there an exhibit that you want to have there? Is there something I'm kind of skipping over because you're too deep on my head now. I got no more questions, everybody.
Sorry about
I
that.
got no more. We went someplace that I didn't know we were going. She took it. She knew the answers. Let's go to the museum. We're gonna get the website. We're gonna kind of close out. At the museum, is there what would be your biggest achievement other than changing people's mind? An exhibit of what?
Well, like I said, I've only been at this museum now
Yeah, but I
for
mean, yeah,
15 months. 15 months.
Yeah.
I've only been here 15 months.
Yeah.
So, I haven't had a chance to really put my hand on that, especially since, the last year has been in COVID, right? But we are slowly making changes. But the museum already had done a lot of work, excuse me, in better understanding the lives of those first 20 and odd Africans that were brought to Jamestown by way of Fort Monroe, or more correctly, Old Point Comfort. And so we have exhibitions that not only talk about them, but where they came from. We talk about Queen Nzinga in our galleries. We have statues to her and stories of her people, and really understanding the Angolan Empire at the time and how it was functioning and who it was working with. So all of that is here at our museum for people to explore. What we are hoping to do in the coming year is to provide an area in our outdoor spaces where visitors will be able to explore Central West African cultures, the way that they are able to experience Powhatan culture at Paspahegh, and the way that they're able to explore early English culture and settlement at the James Fort. So right now we don't have that.
Yeah.
But probably in 3 to 5 years, we will certainly have more of a program that shares that. So that's, one of the things that we've been talking about and working towards.
As we come to a close, have you, excuse me for not knowing this answer, have you written a book? Is there a book that you've written, and let's promote the book or something?
No, that's not what I do. Like I said, I disseminate other people's work. I do a lot of public speaking. So if people would like to know more, you can find a lot of what I've done in terms of public speaking on YouTube. I also have a website.
What's the website
that people can go to? My personal website is ChristySColeman.com.
Okay, everybody.
The museum's website where I am now is JYFmuseums.org.
Okay, I love it.
And of course, if you want to see what's in my head on any given day, you can follow me on social media on Twitter.
Everybody.
And my handle on Twitter is History Gone Wrong, and the E is missing on gone because that's how we talk. So it's History Gone Wrong.
Everybody, I told you. I don't lie to you. I ain't got time. I told you she was heavy.
It's been fun hanging out with you.
Oh my God.
This relax. Thank you so much.
I thank you for being on the channel.
Absolutely.
From the bottom of my heart, everybody, come on now. You got to subscribe after that one. Hit the like button on this video for sure. Hit that notifications bell. Go to her website, the personal one, the one at the museum. We're coming down to the museum. We're gonna make her write a book because she got too much.
Well, let me add a point of correction. Yeah. I haven't written my own book. I started to write one, and then I just get involved in life, right? Yeah. So, but I have contributed to quite a few.
Oh, I'm sure.
So I have chapters in a number of different books on a lot of different subjects in the museum world.
We're gonna get it to write our own book.
So enjoy. But anyway, y'all subscribe to his page. I don't know how many times he got to tell you. You better subscribe. Hit that button.
Hit the button.
Subscribe. No.
And we coming down there to the museum and all that good stuff. Everybody, this is what we do with Strong Inspirations. And to you, my sister, I say with all sincerity, I want you to stay strong, stay safe, stay on your grind, because we love what you're doing. Thank you for being on the channel. Strong Inspiration.
Thank you so much. Take care now.
We are.